Welcome, seekers of history, to the shining golden age of the ancient world's greatest empire. We all picture Babylon as an invincible fortress, protected by towering walls and gods. Yet what if the ultimate threat to this magnificent ancient city came not from the outside world? The true history reveals that swords and siege engines did not conquer this mighty ancient kingdom. Instead, it was swallowed entirely by the overwhelming pride and silent betrayal of its own. Ancient records state the Neo-Babylonian Empire stood as a beacon of unmatched glory. Its legendary capital was a true wonder of the ancient world, blinding all who looked upon it. The majestic Ishtar Gate shone brightly under the sun, covered in striking, brilliant blue enameled bricks. Double walls stretched across the arid desert horizon, seemingly impossible to breach or climb. Above the noisy streets, the legendary hanging gardens offered a lush, green paradise of shadows. Wealth flowed into the city from every corner of the known world, filling the deep royal treasuries. The citizens believed with absolute certainty that their great gods would protect them from any harm. Elite soldiers marched proudly along the wide processional streets, displaying their bronze and iron weapons. To surrounding nations, Babylon appeared as an eternal mountain that could never be shaken. Towering ziggurats reached up towards the heavens, a testament to supreme human arrogance. Priests in immaculate white robes chanted ancient prayers, claiming the absolute favor of Marduk. No foreign army had ever dared to challenge the formidable defenses of this metropolis. Generals laughed at the mere thought of an invasion, trusting blindly in their massive fortifications. Yet the brightest flames often cast the darkest shadows over the people who live beneath them. Beyond the Golden Gates and the wealthy merchant districts, a quiet storm was steadily gathering. The illusion of perfect strength is history's favorite trap for empires blinded by their own success. We are taught to admire the brilliant architecture, but rarely examine the foundations of power. A kingdom is only as strong as the loyalty and the spirit of those who build its monuments. For decades, the ruling class had ignored the subtle cracks spreading slowly through their society. Babylon was a massive fortress of stone and clay, but rapidly becoming a prison of souls. The magnificent facades hid a deeply broken system that was slowly rotting from the inside out. History is filled with tragic tales of invincible empires that collapsed under their own heavy weight. The ultimate downfall of this legendary empire began not with a violent war, but with a whisper. While the world looked at the towering defenses, the true battle was being fought in the minds of men. Let us strip away the myth of the mighty fortress and examine the fragile reality beneath. Modern scholars reveal a devastating truth about the final days of this ancient civilization. The strongest physical walls provide absolutely no defense when the human heart has fully rebelled. This was a city consumed by the blinding pride and extreme luxury of its wealthy elite. In the critical months before the collapse, supreme ruler Nabonidus was completely absent. The king had abandoned his sacred duties, wandering the distant desert sands in search of old gods. He obsessed over restoring ancient temples while neglecting the urgent needs of his empire. This dangerous absence left the heavy burden of leadership to his arrogant son, Belshazzar. Crown Prince Belshazzar possessed none of the wisdom or military discipline required of a great king. Surrounded by flattering nobles, he sank deeply into a life of endless extravagance. While the terrifying Persian army expanded its borders, the prince hosted lavish, drunken feasts. Rivers of expensive imported wine flowed freely through the grand halls of the royal palaces. Golden goblets looted from conquered nations were proudly displayed to mock the defeated populations. This extreme disrespect deeply offended the captive communities forced to live within the city. Among these exiles were the Jewish people, mourning their lost homeland and praying for liberation. Their silent tears and burning, desperate prayers echoed through the dark, cramped alleys of the lower districts. The heavy taxation required to fund these royal parties crushed the weary and starving working class. Thousands of laborers toiled endlessly under the scorching sun to build monuments they would never use. Even the powerful Babylonian priests grew resentful of the royal family's disrespect. Religious leaders secretly plotted against the king who had dared to elevate foreign deities.
The future of Babylon depends on it.
If you were a starving citizen watching leaders waste gold, would you open the gates to an enemy? This internal division created an invisible sickness that paralyzed the entire nation. No amount of thick bronze armor could repair the shattered trust between the rulers and their subjects. The military commanders grew careless, infected by the supreme arrogance of their drunken prince. They believed the Euphrates provided an impassable barrier against any invader. They watched from the high walls with mocking smiles, fully convinced that the Persian forces would simply starve. But the brilliant Cyrus the Great was not a traditional conqueror who relied on brute, bloody force. He understood that psychological warfare was far superior to the strongest battering rams. Cyrus presented himself not as a brutal tyrant, but as a merciful and divine savior. Secret spies infiltrated the city, whispering promises of freedom and religious respect. Desperate citizens of Babylon listened closely to these forbidden whispers of hope in the dark. The stage was set for one of the most astonishing military maneuvers in human history. It was the fateful month of October in the year 539 before Christ. The massive Persian army approached the outer perimeters under the cover of a moonless night. Inside the palace, Prince Belshazzar threw his most spectacular and reckless festival of the year. Historical texts describe a grand hall filled with 1,000 lords drinking deeply from sacred vessels. They foolishly celebrated false security, completely deaf to the movements just outside the walls. According to legend, it was during this feast that mysterious writing appeared on the palace wall. A dark prophecy declaring that the kingdom had been weighed, measured, and handed over to the Medes. While panic briefly struck the court, the prince's guards remained highly intoxicated and unprepared. Do you believe that destiny sends warnings to the arrogant, or do they simply create their own doom? Outside, Cyrus executed an engineering strategy that would change the world forever. His disciplined soldiers dug deep trenches to divert the raging waters of the Euphrates River. Slowly, the mighty river flowing beneath the heavy city gates began to drop significantly. The water receded until it barely reached the thighs of the heavily armed Persian warriors. Under the pale moonlight, elite immortals waded quietly through the muddy, exposed riverbed. There were no dramatic war cries, no flying arrows, and no terrifying sounds of destruction. Babylon's ultimate defense had been neutralized by human ingenuity and extreme patience. Yet, even with the river lowered, the colossal bronze inner gates should have remained tightly locked shut. This is where the undeniable proof of Babylon's internal rot is recorded by historians. The heavy gates facing the river were deliberately left completely unlocked and unguarded that night. Disgruntled priests and desperate citizens secretly conspired to welcome the Persian forces. In the shadows, the high priests quietly signaled to the advancing troops, guiding them into the streets. The Invincible fortress was breached without a single battering ram ever touching the walls. Persian soldiers moved swiftly and silently through the sleeping city, securing key positions. By the time drunken Babylonian guards finally realized what was happening, it was too late. Prince Belshazzar was abruptly silenced in the sudden confusion of the rapid palace takeover. There was no heroic final stand, only the pathetic collapse of a dynasty drowned in arrogance. The morning sun rose to illuminate a city that had surrendered its entire glorious legacy. The myth of the unconquerable fortress was definitively shattered by human betrayal. As the bright golden dawn broke over the horizon, a completely new era began for the world. Cyrus the Great rode majestically through the stunning Ishtar Gate, not as a tyrant, but as a hero. The oppressed citizens of Babylon fell to their knees in the dusty streets, weeping tears of pure joy. They eagerly welcomed the great foreign conqueror who promised to restore their dignity and peace. Former Babylonian nobles surrendered their wealth, their faces pale with absolute terror. Cyrus famously issued a decree allowing all captive nations to return to their homes. The Achaemenid Empire absorbed the mighty city, preserving its beauty but ending its rule. Babylon's immense structures remained intact, but its proud spiritual heart had been entirely broken. It remains history's ultimate reminder that absolute power does not reside in strong stone walls. True strength relies entirely on the unwavering loyalty and collective spirit of the people. The glorious kingdom faded into desert sands, remembered forever as a monument to human pride. The legendary Hanging Gardens simply withered away without the proper care of their creators. The magnificent blue bricks of the Ishtar Gate were slowly buried beneath shifting desert sands. Decades turned into centuries, and the once mighty metropolis became a quiet, forgotten ghost. This stunning historical collapse clearly proved that no society is immune to internal decay. We must remember that powerful authority flows directly from justice and the will of the masses. When the selfish ruling elite build thick walls to ignore their people, they engineer their own ruin. But Babylon was not the very first ancient civilization to vanish in this harsh landscape. Long before the ambitious Chaldeans raised their towering ziggurats toward the burning desert skies, another spectacular empire of masters had already claimed these vast Mesopotamian plains. They were the brilliant Sumerians, the legendary inventors of human writing and deep lore. These extraordinary pioneers built the world's very first complex cities from the thick river mud. Yet their breathtaking cities eventually suffered a mysterious and devastating collapse. Their tragic ending was not caused by a powerful and ruthless foreign army carrying sharp bronze weapons. Surprisingly, they were entirely destroyed by the exact same element that had kept them alive. The incredible irrigation systems that watered their crops secretly poisoned their sacred soil. How did the greatest inventors of the ancient world blindly engineer their own starvation and death? We will uncover this chilling disaster in our next fascinating historical journey. Babylon's fall reminds us that even the strongest walls cannot protect a corrupted heart. Do you think ultimate power is destroyed by outside enemies or by inner human flaws? Please share your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe to our channel for more history.